Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
The storm in agriculture is coming, or is it here? That's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Hi, I'm Tracy, CEO of FarmMarketer.com and host of the weekly show, The Impact Farming Show. Welcome. Farmers, let's talk. What are we going to talk about? The challenges we face in 2025 and how to move forward. This is a little bit different of an episode than I typically do. Farm Marketer, we are a leading ag media platform in Canada, independent, and we also produce the Impact Farming Show, which is a weekly video and podcast show dedicated to bringing you the people, ideas, conversations that will impact your farming operation. And I traditionally focus on bringing guests in weekly in a guest format. Here and there, I do solo episodes to talk about transition planning, things that are on my mind, things that I'm noticing in the industry. But today, I want to talk about something a little bit near and dear to every farmer's heart, probably every farmer in North America, around the world. Things are crazy right now, and the reason I want to do this episode is because I'm noticing a huge disconnect in the way that we're talking about the industry versus what's actually happening. And I think as an industry, we're doing a disservice to our farmers and to ourselves in not digging in and talking about some of the hard stuff. And I don't think this is done intentionally because, heck, there's some pretty big challenges out there. And I don't think anybody has direct answers on how to handle them. But here's the thing. We're always saying that we're concerned about farmers' mental health. But yet, publicly, we're not talking about the big issues and how bad it is. So why am I doing this episode right now? Because I recently read 2 articles that actually pulled the Band-Aid off and started talking about what's going on. The storm is coming. The storm is actually here was part of an article that I read recently on LinkedIn. And it was written by a writer, and it was addressing a CEO that says, the storm is coming. And the writer said, excuse me, CEO, the storm is long here. And then I read another article talking about the reality of what's happening and how it's not being talked about in the industry. So I wanted to open up the conversation here because I have been on my farm and then doing my media stuff and realizing that the narratives just don't match. And again, it's a big conversation and not a comfortable one, but I think we need to open it up so farmers don't feel so very alone in what they're going through in their farming operation. When you're sitting harvesting, probably right now for a lot of our audience, and then they open up and look, and not much is being talked about the crisis of trade and tariffs and the prices of the commodities now. And then they go into their combine and they're harvesting canola, and we know what's happened to canola. I think it's not a great place to be putting farmers into. So as a producer, I'm a cattle farmer in Southeast Manitoba and forage, of course. I'm the owner of FarmMarketer.com, like I said, one of Canada's leading ag media websites, independent, and the Impact Farming Show. So I want to open a conversation because I know just from my conversation with farming friends or going on social media, we're not talking about the real stuff. And I guess maybe that's what we do as humans, and we stuff that under the rug. But when we're looking at September being Suicide Prevention Month, and we're not opening these conversations up, are we doing a disservice to our audience, to our fellow farmers, right? To our clients, to our peers, whatever role you play in the industry. So I want to talk about a few things. And I hesitated doing this episode too, because who wants to sit here and do an episode about the challenges? You'll be like, yeah, Tracy, we know the challenges. But I think there is a freedom in talking about it and stating it and hearing it so that you're not like, oh, is this just my farming operation? Well, I mean, with a lot of the stuff going on, we know it's not just our farming operation, but are my costs too high? And that's why I'm losing money. Like, where is everything at? Again, we're in an extreme situation right now, and we know our fellow farmers are hurting, but I just wanted to touch on it and maybe open up a dialogue for other farmers. If you want to add a comment below, I'd love to do it. I'd love to hear from you. And again, I am not the expert here. If I was, I would be fixing all these problems for all of us. But at the root of it all, I sit at home and go, how can we help farmers? Why doesn't this work? It doesn't make sense. So many of us are just struggling. So anyways, let's get into it. The areas that I want to talk about are 5 to 6. Economic considerations that are going on. Policy, trade wars. We have production. We have our farm business management, transition planning, and then we have farmers as people and our health and our happiness and just trying to have a life. So let's jump in. What's going on with the economic challenges? Well, that ties very closely to number 2, policy and trade wars. But right now, as we know, grain prices are down. Land prices are high. Interest rates are higher than we've seen way in the past. Rising input costs every single year. And farmers are just looking at this and going, the math ain't mathing. And nobody's talking about that. Everybody's raising the price on farmers, and then our cost of what we're getting paid is going down. And many of us will see that meme that goes around on the internet saying, here's our costs right now, and here's what we're getting paid. Here's the costs in 1970, and here's what they got paid. And it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't quite make sense. So that's one of the things that I see as a bit of a disconnect. Sometimes people are talking about farmers needing to invest in this and that, when really, from what I hear on the ground, boots on the ground, and actual research done by the University of Arkansas, and this is US, of course, I didn't grab any Canadian numbers. So farmers right now are losing $240 per acre for corn, $144 per acre for soybeans, rice losing $380 per acre, and cotton being worst of all. They didn't even give a price for that. So that is pretty startling. And I guess one of the reasons that we don't have these conversations or give these numbers is every operation is different. I mean, an operation that's all paid off because it's 5 generations and we've had some good decisions and good grace that we've received, they're probably making money. But this producer has this variable and this land costs and costs X, or a young person or a new person. There's so many variables. And I think that's why we shy away, because some of us have lower costs, some of us have higher costs, but that's a study that was given from the University of Arkansas. So that's pretty startling. So then what happens? Well, there needs to be a pretty good offset of income. So whether that comes from savings, whether you have a different business to cover that, or cattle, let's say, or you're eating into your equity. And if you are eating into the equity of your farm, if you have it, it only takes farmers so many years to eat through that equity, especially if there's been drought or trade wars several years in a row. So it's a very hard and big discussion to have for any article or any podcast or video, because everybody is all over the map. And then you look at the grain prices. the grain guys are hurting. Well, we know what happens when the grain guys are hurting. The cattle guys finally get a win. And I'm a cattle producer, as I mentioned, in Manitoba, and we've been enjoying some steady prices now, which is amazing. And now we're at record highs, which is fantastic because now you can finally start to pay off some debt, put some money in the bank, or reinvest back into your operation to make sure that you are ready for when it gets tighter a little. And again, what's happening to the prices? Our herds are at the smallest number. So are these cattle prices staying good for a while? So it is so hard to have an actual conversation like this, one-sided conversation. It's so hard to talk about it because there'll be two grain farmers in the same area of the same age with totally different numbers. So it's challenging. And then you're talking about the grain guys, but you got to flip to the cattle guys who are finally getting their kick at the can and having some golden years, which is fantastic. So the economic challenges, the grain guys are down. And we're going to go to policy and trade wars and look at some of the issues that are really tanking the markets and causing massive loss right away. So let's go there. We are September 2025 as I record this and release it. And we all know, unless we've had our head in the sand, that things have been politically crazy for quite some time. And I'm going to get political without getting political here. And I mean, I would almost say I've been trying to think about this for the last 10 plus years. It seems like policy, longer than that, I know, but policy and politics have been really hot and become a team sport, and everybody has an opinion and everybody has their team, as we all have, but now it's front and center with social media. And now with different politicians in office, you guys can figure out the names, we're having some issues, policies, trade spats where farmers are getting stuck in the crosshairs for political arguments that at the end of the day don't actually have anything to do with agriculture, but agriculture is being used as a pawn. We are having it happen in Canada, the US, everywhere. I mean, in Canada, we've had massive tariffs put on us from China because of electric vehicles, and that has affected canola, pork, and seafood, I believe. There's so many things going on. I'm not even going to try and list them or even list the tariffs. And in the US, similar things have happened. Soybeans, corn, trade wars with Canada, China, again, so much to list. But here's the thing. As farmers and business owners, interchange that, I think you automatically know that if you are going to step out and be a business owner, you're accepting your lion's share of uncertainty and risk. Otherwise, I think we'd all just go get a job, clock in, clock out, and come home. But we have a love of the land, a love of the animals, a love of the freedom and grit and grace that is needed to farm. The ability to pass it from generation to generation, not getting romantic. And I don't need to sell you on it because if you're a farmer, you understand. But the thing I think that have farmers at the end of their line, so to speak, at ultimate frustration, aside from getting pinched all the time, is with rising prices, and then our commodities drop, but this costs rising costs, and then our commodity drops, but nobody else's price does. And often, right now, as we're seeing, the math isn't mathing. And I know we definitely are there to accept risks, and we know agriculture has its cycles. I think, what is it, like 2 years really good, 2 years really bad, the rest should be break even, something like that. You hear different things. But here's the thing. And I don't like using this word because I think it goes against the grain of entrepreneurs, me too, is how is it fair that at the stroke of a pen, a politician can make a decision, put a policy in, fight back with another country that we have a trade agreement with, and then at the stroke of that pen, at the end of that announcement, that country comes back and then penalizes a completely separate industry. Talking to Canada, the electric vehicles, then how China put tariffs on canola and pork seafood. Canola is one of our largest crops in Canada. How, I don't like that because it sounds very, and we're not like that as farmers and business owners, but how is it fair? And I get this doesn't solve anything, but sometimes I think just a little coffee shop here, grab a cup of coffee and just to talk about it and get it out, just maybe helps a little bit. That coffee shop talk here that a lot of us maybe don't get anymore. So I'll grab my coffee shop here. How is it fair that that can happen? It's almost like you put up a store in a town and you're going to do your business that you started. You're a small entrepreneur, but you put a lot of money into the store and all this inventory, and then you're open and you're selling, and then the government comes and burns down your store. Well, what? We need this to operate, right? And I know this sounds a little bit whiny, but isn't it legit? How is that even possible? And then in the matter of Canada and the US, there's going to be payments made out. And then in Canada, they come back and say, well, don't worry, we'll give you a loan with some really good rates and that will tide you over. Well, a loan just puts us further in debt on a commodity that was crashed because of a political decision. That doesn't help us. Why don't we just not use agriculture as a pawn in a political game and leave us to just deal with market fluctuations and not being a pawn stuck in the crosshairs of policy and trade wars? It doesn't make sense. And I think Canadian farmers, American farmers, I can't speak much for outside of North America. I don't follow as much, but farmers are frustrated. Policy, and political decisions are our biggest threat going forward. Everything else aside, all these political decisions are our biggest threat right now and going forward, as we know. So I think that's where so many farmers are frustrated and this doesn't get heard. It's those talks on social media, in the coffee shop, to your friend, or it stays in the farmer's head. And I've always said mental health, yeah. Well, when we put millions into a farming operation every year and then something comes and sideswipes you completely out of your control, mental health, you think, right? I mean, all of a sudden you're on the hook for that loss. It's hard enough dealing with Mother Nature and then the variability of markets, but then you get completely sideswiped. So then let's say you take the loan to rebuild your store, my analogy I'm going with. You get all your inventory in and then you have about a year and then the government comes and burns it down again with the next trade spat. I hope this is coming across with the right tone and it's not whiny. I think I'm just trying to give a voice to the frustration that many farmers are feeling. But I don't hear numbers. Nobody talks about it. They'll tweet and they'll say this isn't good enough, but we don't actually hear numbers. And it doesn't make sense to the average consumer that just hears farmers are losing this much when they think farmers are million and billionaires driving their golden combines. They don't realize, right? Anyways, that is policy and trade war. And I think right now that has so many farmers, well, up in arms. What do you do? Farmers are stuck in a rock and a hard place. And a loss of, what did I say? $240 per corn. Again, that varies for farming operation. Ones that are more in debt are going to have bigger losses. Ones that are paid off or in a better position or have savings or off-farm business revenue, they might be able to weather the storm a little bit more. But I think some of those two articles that I said is, yeah, okay, a loan where you get yourself in more debt, fine, doesn't fix the problem. Subsidies in the States, yeah, okay, but these are just band-aids. What is the fix? I sure would love to see politicians not use agriculture as a pawn in their game. But anyways, that's just me. Let me know if you echo that sentiment. So, the economic challenges of farmers: one, policy and trade wars; two, three, actual farming. Like I said earlier, farming is hard enough in the cost, the variability, the fluctuating markets, the rising costs, the commodities that drop. Like farming ain't for the faint of heart. Absolutely. It is not. Being a business owner, entrepreneur, any of that is not for the faint-hearted. You got to be able to just ride and die and accept what's going on and have strong financials. We'll go to that next. But the actual farming is hard enough. And I know so many producers are harvesting their canola, harvesting their soybeans, their corn that's flooded markets or tariffs, whatever commodity this is. Could you imagine the feeling of that farmer sitting in that combine cab? They penciled in their math before all this happened. And then they're sitting in the combine, harvesting this crop coming in, seeing it go into the grain cart and going, wow, I'm losing 240 an acre. So put that, oh, I don't even know what the average size of the farm is anymore, of an average farm. It'll be different in Canada and US, but put that by 1,000 acres, 2,000 acres. That's a lot of money. So we talk about mental health again. Sometimes I get frustrated. Frustrated. I always say that a little bit Frenchish. Sometimes we get frustrated. I get frustrated because I hear about the conversations of mental health. And yes, we got to talk about it. Yes, we got to remove the stigma. Yes, we need to realize that we're humans with feelings and thoughts and fears and concern and doubt and fear and doubt and uncertainty and a lot of things against us. And the conversation of mental health opens it up that we're not alone. There's people to help you. Nothing is worth taking your life over. Suicide Prevention Month. Who cares about the farm? We care about you. But it frustrates me when people don't talk about the real talk. I don't know. Maybe I like that Band-Aid ripped off so that we can all just say what's on our mind and know we're not alone, right? When we're just talking about high level subjects and not getting into the nitty gritty and the doubt and the fear and the uncertainty, I don't know that it's easy to connect with. So we have farmers that are in the combine doing the actual farming. We'll leave the cattle guys out of this conversation, guys and gals, of course, for the most part. I mean, let's talk to cattle really quick, but right now I'm focused on the grain. Cattle, I mean, we are finally having our kick at the can and getting some good prices. And if we're wise, like I said, we're putting money in the bank, we're paying off debt, we're investing in our operation. We'll go to transition planning later and how all of this is impacting the future of agriculture with young farmers. But the actual farming, farmers have enough on their plate to deal with, enough risk that we don't need to be used as a pawn in trade wars and for political spats. I think that would be safe to say for most farmers. It's just not fair. Just not fair. Not fair at all. Not very nice. Business management challenges. And of course, we have all of these things I just talked about go to the top line and the bottom line, the income, the expenses, and the profit, or lack of, whatever that bottom line is going to look like. Farmers have to manage their finances right now. Payroll, loans, service their debt. We need to try and market our crops and our animals at the best price. Being a business manager is a whole role, a whole hat, in addition to being the one that needs to produce the crop. So balancing the time between field work and office work. And I imagine looking at those financials right now, after a long day in the combine, just penciling that out and just going, what? This doesn't make sense. How a lot of farmers are in a hard place. And I don't want this conversation to be negative. Not by any means. I want this to open up a conversation for whoever hears it. A few people, 100 people, it doesn't matter. I want it to open up a conversation so you know you're not alone. You're not going through this alone. I think while that doesn't affect the bottom line, I think it's always good to know that we're not alone. And this too shall pass. Agriculture's weathered some big storms, and we'll get through this. And answers. Tracy, do you have answers? No. And I think that's why most people don't open these conversations, because who has the answers? If I had the answers, I'd be running the country. Well, I do have some answers, but maybe another episode or coffee shop talk at home. Just not messing with our markets might be a good start. Anyways, I digress. If you're a farmer sitting at home watching this, I just want you to know that you're not alone. If you're feeling all these things, if you're feeling the weight of the world and the joy of harvest is being robbed from you because of everything going on, you're not alone. That gives me goosebumps, right? We're not alone. There's so many people thinking and feeling the same thing. Your neighbor across the field that you wave at on the next pass as you go through your canola, whether he shows it or not, and whether you guys talk about it at the coffee shop, he's probably thinking the same thing, right? Farming is a very lonely pastime for the most part, unless you have a big team, like you have a big harvest team or multiple employees. But there's a lot of solo time. And as I always say, here's a quote that I like. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. And as I know, our minds are not idle when we're in the combine or the tractor and worrying. I think our minds are on ramped up super worry, which is similar lines. And I don't mean this from a religion aspect, but I've always said when I start to worry, I always say an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Get your mind busy. Think of something else, Tracy. Focus on what you can control on that moment. So do I have the answers? No. Did I almost not want to have this conversation? Yes. Because who wants to open up a conversation that you don't have the answers for? And I decided I'm going to do it. I'm an independently owned ag media publication. I'm a farmer, I'm a media person, I'm an industry person. I see all sides of it. And well, maybe I am off on my comments and my assessment, and I probably am, because again, every farm is different. And the cattle guys are having a heyday. Absolutely. And this next guy might be like, Tracy, I hedged my crop. It's all locked in. I'm good. And I have money in the bank and we're saying, okay, then rock on. But from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of herding farmers. And while I didn't want to start this conversation because I always want to solve the world's problems, I feel like I want to help all farmers. I know that's much beyond my ability, right? But I think as a media person with a platform, I do think I can open it up for whoever watches this, hears this, and provide a space to say, let's talk about it. Call it the online podcast coffee shop, right? So, economic challenges, policy and trade war, actual farming, business management, and then transition planning. Like I said, we focus a lot of our show on transition planning, the Impact Farming Show. I have given my story here and there. I've had lack of transition planning affect people I know, people I love, have torn family and friends apart, and we all have seen it as well. I started the Impact Farming Show 8 years ago, secretly. That was my a very core reason, but not one I said right away, just for privacy. I started it because I'm a media company and I didn't have a podcast and video show and it was trending. And I was a business person and I've been able to build my media company by bootstrapping it with the help of some other people, but pretty much a solo adventure against media giants. I've done this by finding the right information through podcasts and YouTube. And in times where I was feeling deflated at the growth or lack of growth in my company, I've turned to podcasts and video shows. So I started the Impact Farming Show for farmers that are on the go, that want to watch a YouTube or they want to listen to a podcast. And I did a lot of transition planning. And then I got frustrated because there was drought and it was hard times. And it's like, how are farmers even going to think about transition planning when it's hard times? So I left it. And I don't think I was there for a few different reasons in my knowledge, in my boots on the ground understanding. I just wasn't there professionally to really lend my voice or dig into some of the intricate details of transition planning. It just seemed a little bit overwhelming. And in the last year or so, we're into season 8, so I'd say season 7, I've been doing a lot of transition planning. And here I find myself again, young farmers that are trying to come back to the farm, trying to start their own farm. And then farm founders that are going, well, Mayday, I didn't want to talk about transition planning before because I didn't have the answers and I didn't know what to do. Now, when I'm losing 240 an acre, do I want to talk about it? Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and speak to that. And while survival is so important and we got to get through this year and make sure we have a viable farm operation for those of us that are struggling, again, it's all over the map, not doom and gloom. Some are sitting pretty, depending on your operation. But I think we are in mission critical. I said this in one of my last episodes with transition planning. There are so many brilliant people that I've had on the show, transition planners, coaches, accountants, lawyers, that are saying, plan, here's how to do it. And I think because of age dynamics, people have been doing it and there's success stories, but we never hear those or focus on those. We focus on the stats that I gave in the last episode about how many people don't have a transition plan. I think I didn't bring those up again. 80%, how many haven't had a strong conversation with the next generation? So we focus on those because I guess that's where the action needs to be. We can celebrate the ones that are rocking it and bringing in the next generation and communicating, but the ones that the industry focuses on and these episodes focus on are the ones that need the information, the nudge, the courage, the vulnerability to have that conversation. Because there are so many young farmers that we need to carry on the family farm. I think if you're watching this and you're a family farm, which ranges any size, yes, I know, our desire is to pass the farm on to the next generation. Or if you're the next Gen 2, you want to take over the family farm. Why? Because you love it. Not for the money, not for the headache, not for the gray hairs, right? I mean, we see what's going on right now. You just love it. I think anybody that was born on a farm that didn't love it, they were gone. Because farming is a unique way of being and doing and thinking, and it kind of gets in your blood, right? So here's my concern right now. And again, stating the obvious, but there's benefit in that, to opening that conversation up. I've done previous episodes, and maybe I'll link those in the notes of this one, talking about the things that stall farm founders, concerns of Generation 2. Go back and have a look at those if you're interested. But farm founders, there's so many moving pieces to the transition conversation. And I think sometimes our ability to not just, I'm going to say for me, get over myself and then just make the call and say, I don't know what I'm doing. Can we just do this? I'm a person that's run a business for a long time. And while I know I need professionals to help along the process or give guidance or direction, Sometimes I don't want to ask because I like to think I'm a smart person, right? And we don't want to be seen as somebody that's not smart, so we don't make the call, so we don't plan. And then the next generation's waiting in limbo. They go take an off-farm job and they never come back, and another family farm bites the dust. So to me, with everything that the industry has going on, and then the human aspect of avoiding transition planning, I am concerned that we are going to ignore this conversation even more. And in the next 10 years is when we'll do the great farm wealth transfer. And again, that's not everybody being handed a gold mine. It's this land needs to go to the next farmer or it gets sold and the bigger farms buy it up. So if you're a farm founder watching this, I encourage you to grab my reading list. I have it on our website, farmmarketer.com, Impact Farming Show, resources. Put your name and your email in. We don't spam you. Download that list, buy some books from Amazon, and read. Read in the privacy of your room. Your kids don't need to know what's going on right away. Just learn the lingo, empower yourself. Because here is the thing. And same thing for generation two. If you want to come back to the family farm and you're sitting there going, oh, well, this ain't the time to be asking. Maybe use this time instead of being mad, angry, like I had to do in a period where we weren't ready and it wasn't feasible. We went off and did other things. We started an outfitting business. We learned business and money flow and expenses and profit and loss before we even came back to the farming operation. So if you are a farm founder, read, learn, get an idea, and then reach out to a farm family coach so they can help walk you through it. I have no affiliations. I don't get any commissions. I just try and look at the way that I would do it. I would grab my list, read through some of those books, get an idea, and take action because I know so many of the previous generation, they got the short end of the stick by their grandparents. And they're like, we're not going to do this to the next generation. And then what do they do to the next generation? They don't plan, they don't learn, they don't take action, and then they split up their own family, right? I heard an individual share a little video clip, and it was excellent because we like to make everything so complicated. And farmers are brilliant. I mean, you go out and grow a crop and the bushels get more and your productivity is great. Like, I'm not even gonna, I know how smart farmers are and how much you have on the go. But somehow, because of the human element, I think, because of our kids, because of our income coming from the farm as farm founders, because of not knowing the moves or the play and how it's going to work, we don't look into it. We don't know there's resources and we don't do anything and we don't communicate. And then that causes conflict in the family. And not only are we putting our family at risk, how many farm families do we know that have been split up because of this subject? I think we can all raise multiple hands if we had more than two. As a farm founder, maybe that's something to focus on right now. Grab these books. I always mean to bring them and show them to you guys, but go to the website. Like I said, Farm Marketer, Impact Farming Show, free resources. Grab that list. And in there, I list all kinds of books, some free articles in there, and then some different people to follow. I got to update that as well. So here's the thing. If you love the farm founder, Gen 2, I think we owe it to ourselves and the future of family farms, no more pressure. I know we have a lot on our shoulder to just make this a main point of our life because there's a lot going on and we're going to wait for these tariffs and trade wars to settle down. We don't know what the future looks like. So we can't push off transition planning because there's a generation too whose career future is on the line. And I think, like Elaine says, as much as possible, they're not owed that. And it's not assumed that they can come back to the farm. They're not going to get it all for free. All of those things I think need to be open conversations. But clarity is kindness. Even just saying, I know you farm here. I want you to take over this farm, but I don't know what that looks like. There's a lot to take into consideration. And again, tune into all the episodes with the real experts that I have on that'll give you some steps and action items. And if you're at that point and it's important to you, hire a coach, because I'm looking at the industry and everything that's thrown against farmers. If we don't take this 10 years, mission critical, the generational clock is ticking, as I said in the last episode, and we don't plan 10 years in your son or daughter's life, that's a big deal. If they don't know what's going on or they're not going to be able to take over the farm, would they just go somewhere else and start a career with a good pension plan? Everybody deserves clarity. And here is the thing. I do a lot of coaching for business and entrepreneurship. And one of my favorite quotes is business, and I'd say life, is 80% mindset, 20% strategy, right? Farming's pretty easy. Easy, simple, not easy, as we know. Get the crop in the ground, take care of it, pray a lot, and hope it comes off and you get a good pay. Same with our livestock. Keep all the calves alive, take care of them, nurture them, get the weights to where you need to be, sell them, and get your paycheck. The strategy of farming is pretty black and white, and farmers are great farmers. Now, the mindset, the psychology is keeping ourselves on track, healthy, happy when all of this is going on, taking care of our mental health, our fitness, how we eat, our sleep. I know those are all cliche and it almost sounds naggy saying them, but those are the truth. Taking care of us as the vessel, the farmer, the most important person to make sure our farm happens and continues. It's on that farmer's shoulders. So it bears witness that we need to take care of ourselves. Farmers are great farmers. But the psychology, and especially when it comes to transition planning, that's a lot of a mindset. And I've talked about that in so many episodes. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, farm founder, it's you that's going to do it and only you. You have the power. There's books to read. There's tons of articles. My document, I've tried to put a few articles in there that I've found. I couldn't put them all. But it is you. You're a brilliant farmer. You can tackle succession plan and make it happen because it's you and only you. I've said in one of my coaching videos, it's you against you. As an entrepreneur, a business person, a person doing life, it's us against us, right? And how we're reacting to what's coming at us. So I wanted to put that out there. I love the entrepreneurial way of life. I'm a ride and die entrepreneur. I said it in the last episode. The ability to wake up and do your thing, for farmers to work the land, to take care of the animals, to just be able to drive around your pasture like I do every night and watch the sunset and look at the calves, look at the fields, look at the crops for you crop farmers. It is a unique way of life that so very few of the world get to experience. And I think it requires every single one of us in this mission critical phase as boomers get older and start to retire to work to bring in the next generation so that we can continue this on. My fear is that we ignore it for the day-to-day crisis that happen. We don't plan, and then we've put it off too late. The farm kid's gone, the tax is too bad, the farm plan, financial wasn't there, whatever it is. 10 years from now, they're not interested because they're gone and developed a great career. Then, like I said before, another farm family bites the dust. Again, we're in a different situation with these trade wars and what's going to happen on the next term. Are we in a different economical climate, a world agriculture market? I don't know. But we always see prices go up, go down. We have cycles. So I want to make sure that we keep the love alive for agriculture, keep the hope alive in the next generation. And to me, that's some good, clear conversations and some planning so that maybe it's not right now, but we map out a plan with the next generation. And then this is how we get them in. I'd sit here and probably give 100 different situations, but we are creative entrepreneurs. How do we get the next generation in? Do they bring some income with them from a side hustle, from their own group of cows, from a rented field? Again, you know your math. Farmers are entrepreneurial. How do we start to steward the next generation in? Because I know there are a lot of hardworking next generation that want nothing else than to come back to the farm and make them the next generation to be able to carry it on to the next generation. So let's keep the hope alive for so many reasons, just day to day. If you are struggling on your farm operation, know that you're not alone. Again, if it gets to that point, seek help, talk to somebody. There is a lot going on your mind, and there is no dollars that is worth anybody's life in this audience at all. It just isn't. It isn't. So let's keep the hope alive, keep talking, connecting. If you want to leave a comment, that's great. I know a lot of my episodes are always very personal, like transition planning, finance. So some people feel very vulnerable and not want to leave comments. They'll send messages to our inbox. That's great too. Pop a note below and say hi, or say, I love farming. Just say something if you want to feel connected to somebody else, or say what's on your mind. That's up to you. Farming is a beautiful way of life, and I know so many are struggling right now with the down part of the cycle. Don't lose hope. We are here. Drop a note. And as I started this out, farmers, let's talk. Let's talk about the challenges. Let's talk about the wins. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.